What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. We have a big time loaded up Next Pats episode for you today. We're bringing in Danny Woodhead for the Woodhead Bowl. Patriots-Chargers this weekend. Who better to talk to than former Patriot, former Chargers running back, Danny Woodhead. We get into a lot of different things with Danny. He is phenomenal podcast host himself, which we get into, but he's talking about being a young running back in this Patriots offense. He's talking about hope for the Patriots, not far down the line. He's talking about 2021. He believes in this group. He feels like they've got a chance. And we're also bringing in Pro Football Focus's Seth Galina to talk the X's and O's of this Patriots-Chargers matchup, because I think this is one of the most interesting X's and O's matchups that we'll have all year. What's going on with this Brandon Staley defense? Sort of a new age look, or is it just something that we've seen a long time ago that is coming back? We're talking about cycles in football and trends in terms of where defenses and offenses are at right now in 2021. Great conversations on both fronts. Let's get right into Woodhead Bowl time right now. Incredibly excited for our next Pats guest. It's Danny Woodhead. This is the Woodhead Bowl we've got coming up here. It's Chargers, it's Patriots. Everybody's talking about it. Woodhead. So we had to get him on the podcast. Danny, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's crazy that they're tabbing it that I think all around America and maybe even the world. So that makes me feel good.
Is it sponsored yet, Danny, is what I want to know, because it's hard to call it a bowl unless you're getting free stuff. So are we there yet?
To be fair, I mean, Home Depot, a couple others, yeah, they're definitely interested. We don't have any contract signed yet, but we're looking to do that within the very, very near future.
Smart businessman, post-playing days. You obviously have all of that stuff figured out, but tremendous person for us to have on for a variety of different reasons. Number one, because you are at the top of mind. I mean, we could joke all we want. You just got a shout out on Monday Night Football from Tom Brady. So this is like, I feel like the buzz is there. And so how did you feel about Tom Brady basically calling you small on national television? He said you weren't a good red zone threat, Danny, even though, if I recall, you had a red zone receiving touchdown in the freaking Super Bowl. So I'm not sure what Tom was talking about there, but what was your reaction to that?
I think it was probably a little bit of peer pressure for him, just to say something good on television. I get it, right? Like that's what he has. He has to come up with some content. We know what that's like now. We have to have content for listeners. No, I wasn't watching it. Someone told me about it. And number one, he remembered my name. That was cool.
That's nice.
It was okay. Thanks, Tom. You remembered my full name. Number two, I was like, Tom, know your personnel. I didn't play receiver. Amendola and Welker did. And maybe he didn't know it, but I played running back. So I have a lot of respect for Tom. Loved playing with him. But Tom, I'm a running back. And that was what I was more concerned with. It was cool you remembered my name, but I played running back. And you know it is funny though, that comes up is even in New England, but when I was in San Diego, I was everyone says change of pace, but their thought process is sure some like a sub back, but third down in red area. So it's kind of funny that he brings it up because that's kind of what I played.
That's what you did. That's what you were used to some really critical situations down there, and they still do that occasionally. I mean, they'll still throw to the backs out of the backfield. James White is caught his share.
By the way,
touchdowns in the red zone there.
James White, love him. Savage, not real tall.
No,
but if I'm a quarterback, I'm looking to James White when it comes to red area. I just am, because he's a baller.
Doesn't fumble, knows for the goal line. It wasn't a pass, but they pitch it to him. They had a little crack toss play to win the Super Bowl a few years ago. So
kind of important.
You can succeed. You can succeed with a quote unquote undersized guy in the red zone. That is
that was the
thing to do.
That was the Falcon failure, wasn't it?
It was. Yes.
That's when he
ran it as a walk-off touchdown.
Yeah.
Smallest guy in the field.
Yeah. Probably 38 truck is what it was called.
38 truck, is that crack? So was Edelman who was kind of coming down and hitting the end, and
it could
Cannon
be
pulling out?
Or did he motion down? I can't remember, because that could have been just crack.
Edelman motioned down, and then Cannon kind of pulled. Cannon was the right tackle.
I mean, it's the same ish. It's just when you motion down, you don't start in like a bunch. So, but I'd have to see it. I don't remember. I remember him running it in, but I can't remember exactly. But it's one of those plays.
This is a good conversation for us to have, because I do feel like you sort of continued, maybe even started. I mean, it depends on how you view Kevin Falk, who did a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But your role in this offense, to me, has continued on for many, many years now. And it's not just straight sub back. Like, I would say James White is a straight sub back. Like 90% of the time, he's basically a receiver playing out of the backfield. He'll pass protect. He'll do all those things that you want on third down. But they've also had this other running back in the mix, usually, whether it was you, Rex Burkhead was probably the most recent example of that. Dion Lewis did it for a few years here. Guys who could run between the tackles, but also serve as very, very capable, and more than that, receivers.
Yeah.
Do you take some pride in that, knowing that has kind of continued on since you've been here, a decade later?
I mean, I would have to say Kev probably started it.
Right.
But obviously I tried to, represent well that position. And I mean, yeah, it's cool that it's a trend that's kept going. And, a lot of people think of me as kind of a receiver. Like, some people thought I played receiver. It's like, no, I didn't play receiver. I played running back. And I will say this. I think my receiving days, actually, San Diego was where that happened a little bit more. They did use me as a receiver a decent amount in New England. But I also ran between the tackles a little bit more. It was, I think, in San Diego when they kind of let me loose on the receiving part. But yeah, I mean, anytime your name can still be brought up or somewhat remembered, I think that's probably a decent thing. You know what I'm saying? As far as your play. So yeah, hopefully, hopefully fans just kind of respected the way I played, because I tried to play hard every day.
Well, they do, for sure. And I think, for our podcast, it's called the Next Path podcast. A lot of times, off season, we're really focused on draft, but then we get to the in-season portion of the year, and it's really focused on some of the younger guys. And the Patriots have two younger guys that I think, are trying to straddle that line between running back, receiver, being able to do a little bit of everything. They're both very different body types. Ramondre Stevenson's like a 230-pound. I don't know how closely you're following the Patriots these days, Danny, but 230-pound back who can catch it. They sent him, up the seam on a vertical route out of the backfield, which we don't see a ton of in this offense. And, he makes an explosive play that way a couple weeks ago. JJ Taylor is now here, who's I think he's 5'6", like 185. And he does a little bit of both, though. They'll run him between the tackles, and he's very capable there, and he can catch it as well. He had 2 goal line touchdowns this past weekend. My question for you is, and you weren't a rookie when you got here. Yeah. So you had a little bit more of a foundation.
But I was youngish.
But you were youngish. How hard is it to learn all of those jobs as a young player in this offense?
Yeah. I mean, sub back is tough anyways. Just like third down type stuff, because obviously I did that also. I think the biggest thing though is, so yes, it's difficult, but it's like, if you really want it, or if you really want the opportunity to play, you're going to find a way to do it. I mean, I came in it was week 2 on a Saturday. We played the Jets the next day. I wasn't even a part of the team until Monday, like around the team. And I had basically 3 days to figure stuff out. And it's not like I'm a genius. Like, it was more so like, man, I don't want to get fired. I want to keep a job. Like, right. So is it difficult? Yes. But if that was one of the worst weeks of my life, by the way, because I was up at 6:00 studying. I was studying until 8:00, 9:00 at night, because we had practice, we had game plan, we had all kinds of stuff going on. And it's a completely different offense than I was in New York. And I'm like, man, I gotta somehow match up the Jets offense with the New England offense. I didn't know scat protection. That was 64-66. Gone protection in Jets was, don't want to but it was a different number. And there's these different things that I had to be like, all right, this is like this is like that. And it was very hard, but it's very doable too. Like if you don't want to get fired, if you want the opportunity to play, then you will put in the time. And that's what I tried to do. And fortunately, Billy O and Bill gave me the opportunity that first week because they had with Kev getting hurt, which sucks anytime that's the opportunity, but I had to take advantage of my opportunity. And I was fortunate enough, they trusted me enough to do that and trusted me enough to be in 2 minutes. And I'm just very thankful for that opportunity. But also it's like, hey, if you want that opportunity, know what's going on in the playbook, not even just yourself, but know what's going on the other positions too.
It was a wild turnaround for somebody early on in the season. You're a young guy, like you said, you're still just trying to figure things out, I'm sure, to a certain extent with the Jets. And then you go to a completely different scheme. Were you ever told the story of how the Patriots just came to be interested in you, Danny, and how you actually got here? Because again, we're talking about the draft and like player acquisition a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously you weren't drafted, right? No combine invite. Your story is pretty well established, and then you go on to play as long as you did in the league. But how did you get matched up here? Was it just them seeing that you could play with the Jets and we need that guy?
Man, I don't even know. I just remember, my first conversation with Bill, and he's just like, yeah, you've shown you know how to catch the ball, and you had some pretty good plays in preseason, and yeah, we'll see what happens. And it's like, whoa, I'm juiced about it now, right? Like I know I got a great opportunity, but it was, I have no idea. I guess they saw some preseason film, some film from the year before, and maybe they weren't even thinking of me as playing. Maybe they were like, hey, let's just get what we need to know from the Jets. And even, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe
they do that. Do they do that?
See,
do they try to pump you for some information?
They didn't, because I got there late, but that was my thought process. I was like, that's why they're bringing me in. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm not sure what they saw in me. But I was like, once I got in the building, I'm trying not to leave the building. I'm trying not to give them a reason for me to leave the building. I'm trying to show flashes to where they're like, we can't get rid of this guy. Well, like, why would we get rid of him if he's doing this in practice? So I just tried to do everything I could to be efficient and be productive when I got the opportunities.
Did you have any doghouse moments ever, Danny? Because both of these young guys I just mentioned, Stevenson and Taylor, have fumbled early this season, and they both subsequently missed a fair amount of time. Did you ever? I don't remember off the top of my head you ever kind of being in that situation, but did you ever feel like that was imminent, given, like, I don't know, you miss a pass protection or
I mean, there's always things that go through your head. It's like there were a couple times I felt like I might have missed, and maybe the next 2 weeks I didn't get quite as many reps. Nothing like where like you don't play, but yeah, I mean, no, and just trying to give guys opportunities, because my second year we draft 2 running backs. So I kind of knew that was coming. And it's funny because people are wondering why I left. Well, I wanted the opportunity to play, and I knew that they were going to give the 2 younger guys a chance to play. So it was kind of, I don't want to say it would have been dumb of me to stay, but they're going to do anything. New England, a lot less than other teams, but you still have to give your draft picks an opportunity. But I knew that was going to come, and I was just like, hey, and I had a great fit in San Diego.
Right. I mean, yeah, it worked out pretty well for you there as well. So can't argue with that decision. I did want to ask you, Danny, before we let you go, I have two last questions, but one of them is, we try to talk scheme here too, and trying to figure out, okay, who's this, what is this team going to be? Who are they? What's next for them offensively? And it feels like, though, the 2 tight ends they have now are different than the 2 tight ends they had when you were there and things were really humming. They're trying to do some similar things there. And one thing that we saw last week, a little bit more so than other weeks, was Jonnu Smith all over the field, out wide, catching screens, in the backfield as a fullback, in the backfield, split back gun kind of look and taking a handoff. how confusing do you think it was for opposing defenses to try to figure out what you guys were doing when you had those two tight ends that could do some different things? Like, I know you guys can hear things on the field that we can't hear on the broadcast. Like, were teams' heads spinning? Like, could you hear the confusion on the other side at times when, you're able to be creative in that way with those two versatile players at that position?
Yeah, I think the toughest thing for a defense is it just creates matchup problems. It creates like, what personnel are we going to run? Are we going to run our base, our nickel, our dime? Because then if they run dime, because you have two tight ends that can catch the ball, get open, oh, we have to cover them with a corner or a safety or whatever. Well, then if you're running a dime package, we can run all over you. It happened with our two tight ends when I was there. It's, oh, we're going to play dime. Oh, Danny's in the backfield, so now we're going to run dime. Well, then what are we going to do? We're going to run all over your face. And if you're going to play base against us, fine, we'll go to empty, and you're going to lose that way. So it's more than anything, it's just like, and that's what New England I always respected about after being at other places too, is they're like, no, if you're going to show us this, we're going to do this. If you show us this, we're going to do that. We don't care if we throw the ball 70 times in a game. We don't care if we run the ball 70 times. Yeah, a little hyperbole there, but that's literally what their offense is there's sometimes it's like, we're just not going to let Tom throw. So then we run the ball. Bill and Josh are so okay with moving the ball how you want to move the ball. It's funny because you get so many coaches in this league and high profile coaches. They're like, we got to run the ball. We got to, well, do you? Right. I mean, you got to win the football game. No one cares about when it's all said and done. If you win 3-2, no one's going to, stats don't matter. A win's a win in the NFL. It's so hard to win in the NFL that you just find a way. But that's to kind of answer your question. It makes it so difficult because if you have two guys that can pass catch, but they can block too. I was with Hunter for a year or two. I can't remember, maybe 2 years. No, it was just one, but he was unbelievable. And he was also a willing blocker, but he could also get open. I don't know Jonnu as much because except from just watching on TV. I know Hunter from day to day. And if you have two tight ends like that, it just messes with the defense. And if you have a pass catching back, or not a pass catching back, a guy that can catch the ball, but also can run. I mean, look at Brandon Bolden. He's been in the league for a while. The dude can play. He's always been able to play, and he's fast. Well, just what he did, what was it last week where he had like a ton of yards, had a touchdown catch,
70 plus receiving yards, a touchdown. Yep.
Yeah. He caught that like swing pass going to the lighthouse on the bottom of your screen. And like, he can do that. But if you have that guy in there, someone that can do that, and you have two tight ends, and I know Brandon can run between the tackles, a defensive coordinator doesn't want that. They just don't, because then it's like, well, I don't know what they're going to do. We're going to either lose with them running or lose with them passing. So that's what that type of personnel can present. It can present problems.
Yeah, the versatility at the running back spot, I think, is something that we probably leave out when we're looking at, okay, they've got these two tight ends on the field. But it's like, well, that guy in the backfield can also be a receiver, or he can pound it between the tackles, and that allows your entire offense to be versatile.
It's funny. So obviously you need guys that can catch the ball, get open as a receiver, right? I always, and it's not because I'm a running back. I'm putting on my, if I were an offensive coordinator or if I was a defensive coordinator, I'm putting that hat on. That's why New England has always been able to move the ball, always to win on third downs, always to do different things, because they create matchup problems. In all these other places, people are like, oh yeah, I think this guy's a third down back. I think this guy's, or a 3 down back. It's like, well, do you have eyes? Like, I mean, the guy has to be able to get open and win and catch the ball. Like, James White can do it. James White can run through the tackles if he wants, or if they allow him, if that's part of the game plan. But it messes everything up, the running back position and the tight end position. because then there's indicators all over the place. Because if you have a tight end that can move around or a back that can move around, there's man-to-man indicators and zone indicators that mess a defense up. And more than anything, it tells Mac Jones, the Tom Brady's like Tom Brady, but now you guys have Mac. It tells him where to go. Like, oh, well, it's man-to-man. If you're 3-by-1 and the tight end and the back are on the same side, well, we already know what it is. Or if it's 3-by-1, and then what they usually do is they motion the Z receiver almost every time, which is my guess is what Myers is playing. And what it does is there's just indicators, but then you can still go 2-by-2. So it tells the quarterback where to go, when to go. And it says, okay, well, obviously he's hurt right now, but we got James on a backer. I'm probably going to throw that 10 times out of 10. Or we have Jonnu or Hunter Henry on a backer. Like, really? Like, that's this dumbest thing a defensive coordinator could do, but they have to do it when you have versatility at those positions.
Hunter's game is something that I've just gained a lot more appreciation for, being able to watch him day to day. You know, when he came in and he was obviously highly paid and he was super productive with the Chargers, but it wasn't like he was, you know, the Jonnu Smith kind of athlete, and he wasn't, you know, like Gronk sized, you know, so it's like, okay, how is this going to work? But man, he knows how to get open. You can tell he's got something going on with Mac already in terms of the communication at the line and like them using hand signals and being on the same page. And he just looks like a really smart player to me, because he's been super productive through the first half of the season here. And he didn't even really play much in training camp, which is even more impressive.
Right. No, he can get open. He knows where to be. He will block. Like, that's the thing that people don't understand. To get a tight end that can also block, like, there are a lot of, I'm not going to name names because I'm not going to do that, but on other teams who are like the top tight ends.
Yeah, we'll name them later. Yeah, Kelsey, Waller.
Just watch the willingness to block on tight ends. And if you can get a willingness to block by your tight ends, that's what made Gronk. I mean, that's a little far to say, because Gronk also has stupid catching ability, stupid receiving ability. But I'm saying, like, when you can do that and you block like an offensive lineman, you just ruined a defensive coordinator's day.
Woodhead Bowl. Who do you like? Who do you follow? Do you consider yourself more a Patriot than a Charger than a? I mean, I know you played on several different teams, but where do you stand there, and what's going on in this game? Tell us how this is going to play out.
It's funny. If you're going to say who I played 4 years in San Diego, 3 in New England. Those are definitely the two places I resonate with more than obviously the Jets and my cup of coffee at the Ravens. But like, those are the places I can't say like, man, I see myself as this, because there's two almost different careers. New England was kind of when I was just like trying to cut my teeth. Right. And I got my opportunity, and that's kind of where I just broke onto the scene a little. Not that I was some like amazing super, but like that was where I broke onto the scene. And
sure.
I think San Diego is where I came into my own, because New England, I was just trying to like, gosh, I just don't want to get fired every second. And then San Diego is when I was like, no, I've been in the league now for a while and I can play. I mean, I still had that undrafted mentality of like, they're trying to replace me, but I became like, a lot of the people in New England know me personally, but don't know me personally, as far as like maybe the trainers and stuff, but don't know my humor. Like, I'm a fun-loving dude that just enjoys the game. I would joke around all the time. That didn't happen as much until I was in San Diego. Because
that's interesting. Like, just because you're stressed.
Yeah, I think just because I was stressed and I was new to it all, and I was just like head down. Like, people always say, hey, do you like Tom or Phil better? And it's like, well, I had a great relationship with Phil. I had a good relationship with Tom, but I wasn't at the same, like at that time, I wouldn't joke around, communicate as much, because I was just head down. I'm doing my job. Whereas I think my close friends and some guys on, like a lot of the players on the team knew, but not a lot of people within the organization knew. Like, man, I just like to have fun. Whereas I came into my own, I was just kind of comfortable with being it like that in San Diego. So it's just kind of two different careers. The fans at both places embrace me crazily. I mean, New England fans still embrace me. And that's amazing. So I would say, I feel like I don't resonate with one team because it was like two careers. It's like both.
Right.
So I resonate with them. As far as the game, I don't know, man. Like LA, it's hard to say LA. They got a lot of talent and always have. They got a coaching staff that seems to be good. Lombardi coming from the Saints. I trust him using the weapons that he has. That's the biggest thing. There's so many offensive coordinators in this league that don't know how to use their personnel. They're just like, no, you're playing in my system and that's what it's going to be. It's like, well, like, do you want to be good? Because if you want to be really good, you have a system, but you don't worry about the system. You put the players in your system and you just work with the players. That's a great thing about, everyone always says, man, like, people tried to say I was a system player at first. Kind of annoyed me. And a lot of New England, like, guys, they say, oh, they're system players.
Right.
New England is not a plug and play. Out of all, they just had a lot, man, we had some dogs. Like, we just had some really good players that other teams didn't want because they didn't measure up to the measurables. But like, we had some dogs there. And the thing that Josh Billy-O, that what they did so good is they didn't like have this just system. And it's like, all right, you go into this spot. Wes, you're really good at this. And we're going to do everything we can to make you look so good at that. It's how many times did they be like, all right, Wes, it's our system. It's 3rd and goal. We're lining you up wide and we're going to throw a fade route to you. That'd be dumb. Right. I mean, it just wouldn't be smart. So there's a lot of offensive coordinators that just try to be like, well, you have to play in our system. No. In the 3 years I was there, it felt like we had 3 different systems, like 3 different offenses. They were one year we ran the ball a lot. Another year, all we did was throw it. Like, it's just, they do such a good job of just getting the best out of their players. I think that's what Lombardi does too, because he was under Peyton. Right. So it's the first time I've really felt like San Diego is, I'm going to call them San Diego, still, like, they have a lot of talent, but there's something New England's almost 2 plays from being 4-2. Like, everyone wants to, I don't want to say just say, oh, you know what? They're done, yada, yada, yada. I wouldn't be shocked if they win a bunch of games and maybe make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to, but like, you guys, they're good. They're a good football team.
They were 1 play away from beating the Dolphins early. They fumbled. The game was over. They were just trying to run clock.
Yes.
So that's the tough one.
Could have beat the Bucks.
Could have beat the Bucks. Went to overtime with the Cowboys.
That's in the Bucks, and the Cowboys are a good football team.
Yeah.
Obviously the Bucks are the Bucks, but like, could be 4-2 very easily.
And I think you're right. As long as they get some of that stuff cleaned up. I mean, it's a young team. It's a new team in a lot of ways. So it's like, okay, we're always used to seeing the Patriots take care of that stuff, the penalties and the fumbles. And so, like, okay, that could be a big but if they get that stuff figured out, who knows? I think the quarterback's getting better every week. So it'll be interesting to see. Well they end up doing.
I think it's, if they can survive, I don't want to say survive, but if you can get to Thanksgiving at a respectable Thanksgiving and after, that's where you make the playoffs. And Bill knows that. He always preached it. It's like, after Thanksgiving, that's where we see, the team. So if they can get close to 500 or about at 500, I mean, I think people aren't going to like it, but I think they have a good chance. And that's the last team you want to play is New England.
You're at least in the mix, right?
Yeah.
You just want to be in the mix at a certain point in the season, and then you just trust that you're going to continue to get better.
Right. You don't have Tom Brady anymore. So it's like, you're not getting, it's what other good teams have to deal with is maybe not getting a bye, like that's just, that is what it is. And that might be what it is, but I think they have an opportunity if, they play well down the stretch. It wouldn't be shocking if they make the playoffs to me at all.
Danny Woodhead, thank you so much for spending some time with us here, man. We have to give a shout out to the Out of Nowhere podcast. Okay. This is at OON Pod on Twitter. Check these guys out. It's Danny, it's Matt Slauson. What can you tell us about the Out of Nowhere podcast?
Oh, man. What can't I tell you? No, it's
probably a fair amount. It's a family podcast. So let's just be aware of that.
Yes. Family podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's me and another former NFL player. We talk football. We talk a lot of Nebraska football, and we talk a lot of NFL football. And then outside of that, we talk a lot of Slauson, because Slauson's a big O lineman, does reckless things. And the segment you're going to check out is the story time with Slauson, because it's weird. You're going to get offended a little bit, but you will laugh. And man, we try to have fun. I came from out of nowhere. Slauson came from out of nowhere. And then sometimes we'll even do interviews and everyone comes from out of nowhere. So we try to hear stories, but other than that, we love to talk football.
Awesome. I've loved listening to the episodes that I've heard. The picture, I would say that really says it all. When you've got Slauson, all tatted up with the big beard, and you've got Danny there with the very short and very tight. The quads are throbbing.
You gotta show off the quads.
When you've got them like that, I would say yes. I wouldn't be able to do that. You got two toothpicks hanging out of about what is that? Those got to be like 7 inches on the jean cutoffs right there. But it's a tremendous look for you. Not for all of us, but for you. Out of Nowhere podcast. Make sure you check it out. Danny, thanks so much for being with us, man. Hey. And good luck. Good luck with the Home Depot potential, the Lowe's sponsorship. Maybe get those two to play off of one another. You end up with a nice little deal for the Woodhead Bowl.
Hey, don't count out Menards.
Menards would never. And Menards, if it doesn't work out for Menards, hop on over to the Next Pats podcast. We've got an opening for you guys there.
Awesome.
Danny, thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
Awesome stuff there from Danny Woodhead, who I was able to cover for a few years before he headed out to San Diego. And I just felt like it was a lot of fun talking to that guy about all sorts of different stuff. We could have had him on for an hour, but we also had to get in our conversation with Pro Football Focus's Seth Galina. I learned a lot from Seth, reading the guy on Pro Football Focus, listening to his podcast with Deontay Lee. Too high. We get into that. We get into what's going on with Staley's defense with the Chargers, what he did with the Rams last year, who the Patriots also saw, and what's happening with this Patriots offense right now. What kind of wonky tweaks are they making to this thing in the last few weeks? And can it get to where the Patriots need it to be for them to be true contenders this season? Mac Jones's rookie season. Let's get to our conversation with Seth right now. All right, very happy to have with us now Seth Galina from Pro Football Focus, senior analyst there. He's also the co-host of the Too High podcast, which you must be listening to. He's there with Deontay Lee. They get into real X's and O's types of topics. If you're into that sort of thing, we try to touch on those every so often here on the Next Pats podcast. But what Seth and Deontay do there is great work. So check it out. Too High. Seth, thanks for being with us, man.
No, thank you for having me. The pleasure is all mine.
No, that's not true. That's not true. You already told me that you're only here because you're looking for a way to get out of real work for today, which, listen, I'll take it either way. So it's fine with me. We have you here. We get to pick your brain now. That's all.
I will say,
I need.
Real work for me, I'm very lucky that real work for me today, for example, consists of me watching all the Tennessee Titans play action passes. So like that. And like, I'll find, don't get me wrong, I will find excuses not to do work as much as I can. However, that's I'm very lucky that that's my job.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm sure you've got a lot of work there to do, play action pass in Tennessee. That'll keep you busy that'll be a good solid day's work. So appreciate the effort out of you there. Appreciate you being on with us here. But your podcast title is perfect for us this week. You guys host the Too High podcast. This Chargers defense has been described as a too high kind of defense. We've talked to Josh McDaniels about it this week. We've talked to Bill Belichick about it a little bit this week. Very, very complimentary. All the Patriots are of Brandon Staley and what he's doing there with the Chargers. But I wanted to ask you, because I've heard you and Deontay talk about this kind of topic before. Why is it that Brandon Staley is doing what he's doing with this too high stuff? Because it feels like, and we're just coming off Patriots Jets, it feels like the league for a long time was Seattle 3. Like that was the most popular thing. And it probably still is, Seth, to a certain degree. But what is it about Staley's defense that maybe makes it what is coming next in the NFL?
Well, I think for eventually, you talk about the Seattle cover 3 stuff. Like eventually we were going to get out of that system because everything is cyclical in football. Eventually offenses are going to find answers for whatever you're doing, whatever the league is doing. So we're going to come out of it eventually. Now, I said a couple of years ago, I wrote an article saying that we were going to get more cover 4, more quarters, maybe more cover 6. And we were going to see it as kind of the way that it had been played relatively sparingly throughout the league in, like, let's say between 2010 and 2020, let's say. Well, that is a very like zone spot chop, like the way we think about zone covers. Like everyone is gonna, see that it's a pass play, and then they're gonna turn, they're gonna find their landmark on the field, they're gonna turn back to the quarterback, and they're gonna be a zone defender, like the way we think about zone defenders. And that means that specifically the nickel corner, which now every team runs with a nickel corner on defense, the third corner, is going to be inside of the slot receiver, because he needs to be still, even though you're playing quarters, he still needs to be part of the run defense, part of the run fit, as we say. And one of the things that Staley did was kind of change you. Yes, he's playing more quarters, but it's specific quarters where he's changing which players are part of the run fit. And it helps a lot because now you can get more match coverage, even though you're playing too high. When we think about match coverage, we think about what Nick Saban would call Ripley's match, which is a cover 3 match, which basically means if the slot receiver runs vertically, it's man coverage. That's really all it means. And if not, then it's just that zone, that spot dropping zone. So I think that's been a really big thing. So now you move the nickel back outside, and he calls it the star, like Nick Saban does. You move that star defender outside, and they've used Jalen Ramsey at that position a lot, as anyone who's listened to stuff about the Rams has heard. So they move him outside, and what that means is if you're outside of the slot, someone else has to be part of the run fit. So they do some interesting stuff where either the safety to the wide side of the field is part of the run fit, or even in very interesting scenarios, the safety to the weak side of the field is part of the run fit, coming from a depth of 10, 12 yards wherever safeties line up. So just that has been, like, we all knew that this was coming, but for him to do it in these kind of interesting ways, and playing a 5 down front, which is very different when you're still trying to be too high, is very interesting. So just that type of stuff has been very unique relative to what the NFL had been for 5-10 years.
So we talked a little bit here leading up to the Patriots Jets game about how the Patriots might try to use a 5-man front, and they did early in that game. Eventually the Jets basically had to totally get away from the run because the score was what it was. But first and second down, first series of the game, they had their, it looked like, to me, I don't know how much of that game you watched, Seth, but it looked like a bare front. They had a real nose tackle. They had Carl Davis, 330 pounds or whatever he is, and 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. And that, to me, is something that they'd done really going all the way back, and probably even before this, if I, went back and checked. But they did this in the Super Bowl against the Rams, where they had a bunch of guys on the line of scrimmage to try to stop that wide zone run. And so that's everywhere now, right? That's the Shanahan offense. That's why we talked about it going into the Jets game, because they have Mike LaFleur there, and he spent time with Kyle Shanahan. So how can you, if you're the Chargers though, and maybe this is why they're last in the league in run defense, Seth, how can you use that 5-man front, which some Bill Belichick talked about today? He was asked, what's different that Staley's doing? He said they use 5 down linemen, and that's kind of rare. Why would they choose to, let's do some math, have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage and then have 2 high safeties, because that's already 7 players. And now it feels like, I don't know, you got like, are you playing base defense with, it's an interesting way to try to figure it out. Is that what's hurting them in the run game?
Well, the first thing I'll say about the Chargers, especially compared to last year's Los Angeles Rams, is the difference in the interior defensive line. The Rams happen to have the best interior defensive lineman that's ever played football, most likely, and a guy who I really like in Sebastian Joseph Day. I almost said Joseph Gordon-Levitt there by accident.
I thought you were going to say Sebastian Janikowski, who also could probably play defensive tackle these days.
that's probably could have played in his playing days too. So they have 2 really, really good players inside, and that obviously allows you to do a lot more. And that's just been a big issue for the Chargers. I think one of their players inside, his name is Foster Merrill. I don't know much about this guy. They have Linval Joseph, who has had a good career, but maybe he's not the same player he was with Minnesota. So it's been rough. And I say interior linebackers too are not great. So it's like the Rams interior linebackers weren't great either, but they had these great players in front of them. Whereas now you're saying one of those 2 have to be good in this system. You either have to have great interior linemen or great interior linebackers, and the Chargers don't have any. So that's been tough for sure, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If you're going to play with 2 high safeties, your boys up front got to win, especially inside. They're taking 2 gaps oftentimes, not necessarily in that 5-man front, but if it's a 4-man front, then they're taking 2 gaps, and they're going to have to win against 2 offensive linemen to clear the way for the linebackers to make plays. One of the interesting things that Staley did, and I think really when we talk about Staley, yes, this is kind of new to the league, what he's doing schematically overall, but he's been really good at game planning specific opponents. So against the Raiders, where I think they had their best run defense game of the season, they said, hey, we're playing against Derek Carr, and yes, he's been a little better throwing the ball down the field, but maybe we don't need to play with 2 high safeties against a team that's against a quarterback that's not going to play that type of game against us. So they spun down, they brought the second safety down and played a regular 1 high cover 3, cover 1 defense against them. And then when you bring that another player down low, you can stop the run a lot better. And they were able to. I honestly think that you might see that against New England, given what New England wants to do on offense as well. So I think that's been really one of the main issues, that when they really want to play that quote unquote Staley style of defense. Well, you have good. Joey Bosa's great. You have Derwin's great. You got some other players that are really good. The issue is the interior of the defense is a little soft.
I think you're right. I think they're probably going to have to change against the Patriots, because you tell me, it feels like big picture, right? This defense is the reason why it might become a thing and already is becoming a thing is because it eliminates or helps eliminate the explosive passing game. And everything's about explosives now. Like, you get coaches that are willing to talk about how, well, yeah, turnovers dictate who wins and loses, but explosive plays dictates that too. And if you can figure out defensively a way to stop that, you might be okay with you probably don't want to be the worst run defense in the league, but you might be okay with being below average if it means you're stopping the, 30, 35, 40-yard plays behind you. And against the Patriots, though, you're right. Like, I think Mac Jones he's like 23rd in the league in air yards per attempt, or, they're not that team. So, but what you're saying is, it sounds like they can do both from that 2 high shell. Like, they can still turn it into a single high kind of look.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be a reason to play that type of single high cover 3, cover 1 defense in the league. And some teams will kind of force you to do it. So one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is the Vikings. And one of the reasons why they have such an explosive passing attack, even though who knows how good Kirk Cousins really is because they put the personnel on the field. CJ Ham, their fullback, a second tight end, that forces defenses to say, I shouldn't say forces NFL defensive coordinators to look at it and say, hey, we want to stop the run. So we're going to put an extra linebacker or a down safety there. And that's when you do that, you give one-on-ones on the outside, and the Vikings have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. So there's still like the NFL coaches still want to have a reason to play cover 3 and cover 1. Obviously the New England Patriots, big cover 1 team, and they're still going to be a big cover 1 team. So there's still a reason to do all that stuff. But I do think, like you're saying, the minimization of the explosive passing play is exactly why you play with 2 high safeties, because teams, the Seattle Seahawks with Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman and Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright and Michael Bennett getting after you. Yeah, they could play single high, cover 3, and stop explosive plays because they got better players than everyone else. But most teams, as that scheme spreads throughout the league, those guys aren't available for the Falcons. They aren't available for Gus Bradley in the Jaguars, save for 1 year when he had Jalen Ramsey and AJ Bouye. So like they can minimize plays, but mostly if you're playing 1 high, you're gonna get tested down the field, and teams just don't want to deal with that anymore.
Right. And that's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots play it moving forward, because they don't have the personnel, I don't think, to play a lot of cover 1 anymore. You know, they've got Jalen Mills as one of their starting outside the number corners, and JC Jackson's very good, I think. And I think Devin McCourty's still pretty good, but man, at some point you just kind of, you get to a certain place talent wise. They just lost Jonathan Jones, who's a good slot corner for the rest of the year. You know, I don't know how they're going to be able to continue to play the defense that Bill Belichick typically wants to play, but all that is very interesting. That transition, Seth, from Seattle 3 to, okay, now Shanahan offense is everywhere, to now we've got 2 high stuff everywhere because of the Shanahan stuff, because of the explosive pass play. It was Saleh who, when I asked Saleh about sort of this transition in the league, he said, you know, you want to be able to avoid haymakers, is what he kept calling it. It's, you know, those haymaker pass plays that can kill those single high teams. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Chargers play it this weekend. What do you think of how much Patriots offense have you watched, Seth? Is it boring to you? Is it, and the one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I have listened, I would say I'm a loyal listener to the Too High podcast, and you guys gave Derek Klassen like all kinds of grief because he wanted to talk about split back gun looks.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there saying, man, this never happens. Why are we even wasting our time talking about this? And days later, Josh McDaniels is opening the game, split back gun, but with a fullback and then with a tight end, and sometimes with 2 backs. So I guess that's what I'll ask you first. Let's keep it granular. What's the deal with the split back gun stuff? We called it pony forever, but it was always like Dion Lewis and James White. And you had these 2 like receiving backs back there. Now we're seeing Jakob Johnson, the fullback, back there. Jonnu Smith is back there. What's the advantage to using those kinds of looks? Because they were doing it in some weird ways too. They were even aligning the fullback in front of, like, a yard in front of the back who was offset in the gun, and they're running like lead draw and having great success with it. But we haven't really seen that much here. So what does that tell you when you see that so often?
I have made a private apology to Derek, and I'm going to make a public one right now. So when he asked me for the numbers on this formation split back gun, one of the issues is that a lot of teams will line up in it and then right before the snap motion out of it. So I was giving him false numbers because the final formation that we charted as will be different than split back gun. So it's a lot higher rate. He was right, and it's a lot higher rate than I was. I mean, look, I'll you know, take the piss out of Derek any day of the week, but yeah, I was.
It's probably not a lot. Is it a lot high? I mean, it's not like
a lot. It's probably not a lot
prevalent.
higher, but we are seeing it. Like you said, now all of a sudden Patriots are doing it, and some other teams are doing it. Yeah, so I think the pony thing refers to more the type of personnel. So like you said, pony with 2 real running backs, and now you're more in a 20 personnel or 21 personnel with a running back and a fullback. Obviously, Patriots are a big user of fullbacks these days in Johnson. So yeah, I think it's interesting. teams are doing it. I saw the Bengals. I don't have an answer why I don't know if it's good or not. I really don't know.
Because you could run some of those, especially if it's like, I mean, like what we usually see is under center, I formation, Jakob Johnson through the hole, like, and it's the same looking play, but now they're running it out of the gun. And is it a timing thing, you think, or it's just to give Mac Jones a better look at what he's seeing from the defense to maybe change the play? Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's very possible. I'm stumped with this one, to tell you the truth, because I just think, why don't you just do that from what everyone's running, which is the fullback or your kind of blocking tight end just off the line of scrimmage in that, what we call it, the H-back position or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, well, why don't you just do that? Like, why do you have to need your fullback back there? Now, if you have two real running backs in the game, then for sure you might want to do it like that. I think you can get some nice screens out of it. That's what teams are doing, motioning one of the running backs quickly right before the snap, and it's kind of like an RPO read. Is the screen available? Yes. If not, I'll hand the ball up type of thing. You're seeing that a lot. You saw I think the Packers were doing that a lot last year and maybe this year too. So yeah, I mean, there's some interesting stuff. You can have some like cross action where, okay, where's the ball going? Because there's a lot of action in the backfield with three kind of backfield players, two running backs and a quarterback. So there is some stuff you can do. Helps maybe with blocking. You get two guys, when the tight end is there blocking from his tight end's position, well, he can't scan and sort out different pressures. He's always going to be on the end of the line and maybe just chip help with the defensive end. So you can probably do more protection wise if you want to keep 7-man in or something like that.
That's kind of interesting. The last thing I want to ask you before we let you go is just, do you feel like Mac Jones is capable of taking the Patriots to where they want to go? Where do you stand when it comes to the athletic quarterback in today's NFL? And obviously that was a big talking point during the draft because of the players that were available and that were talked about at the top of the draft. And now Mac Jones, who is clearly, the least athletic of the bunch, has performed pretty well. And, statistically is ahead of everybody when it comes to certain metrics. So has his first 7 weeks altered your opinion of that at all? Or have you always been a believer in just, if you can win from the pocket, that's good enough these days?
Well, I one of the issues of like winning from the pocket is, can you do that as a 22-year-old? Like, that's hard, right? That's really, really hard. And I think the Patriots have done a lot to protect him and set him up for success. And I do think that there's definitely a long-term feel to what they're doing now. They really don't want to give him too much. And I think something that my co-host Deontay said on the podcast a month ago or something like that was, it's almost like they're not going to give him a rookie quarterback offense in terms of the concepts, in terms of what they want to do with him. They're going to give him the Josh McDaniels offense and say, learn it, and you'll get better every week. And then down the line, we got a real quarterback. And that's sometimes difficult, because we're seeing it with like a guy like Tua, who they're protecting with RPOs and this stuff and blah, 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 and play action and stuff. So I think it's a smart move, because you got to look at this stuff long-term when you take a quarterback that early, and especially a quarterback who is his trait coming out was, he's accurate and he's a processor. That's like, we've seen a lot of guys who we say accurate and processors, and then they get in the NFL and their accuracy is fine, but the game is just too fast for them. And he's been almost as advertised in that sense. He's accurate. He can get to the right receiver. But we'll see once they have to start really throwing the football around and maybe the running game's not working for a week or something. But I do think this is a very smart long-term play for them. They picked this, and this is why they picked him in the first round, right? This is not a third round quarterback. Like, they're going to work with him and try and get him down the line to be a very good quarterback. I think he can be.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think, some of the stuff he does, and it's really, I think you can wonder whether or not they try to be explosive enough to win in today's NFL. But I think what they're having him do is just kind of what they see as their off, it's get it out quickly, understand what you're looking at, and don't go broke making a profit. And we've heard them use those words, and it's like, it's sort of the antithesis of today's NFL, where 100%. You should be looking to, instead of having 14, 15 play drives down the field to score a touchdown, you can do it in 5 or 6. And it's, it's like they're okay with not being that right now. And so, he's run it pretty well to this point, at least.
Yeah. It's just like, are they going to make the playoffs this year?
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, we had this big time name drop, but we had Kurt Warner on the podcast last week, and he was more critical of Mac Jones than I thought, because he said, listen, you can win with Mac Jones, but are you going to win because of Mac Jones? And like, he's playing well as a rookie quarterback. They're still 24th in the league in points. So like, at the end of the day, like, is it enough? I don't know. We'll see. I think, it's obviously it's so early. He's so young that, you give him more time and you see where it goes from here. But I think it's a fair question. You can be in both camps and say, he's played really well. Is it good enough to be the kind of team that they want to be? That's all.
Yeah, I think you put him in the off, like I said, and then hope in 3 years or maybe even next year after a real off season that they can start hitting these explosive plays down the field. Because right now, like you said, the offense, he's been good, but the offense isn't really moving the ball that much.
Or they're seeing this Brandon Staley too high thing start to circulate the league and say, hey, these defenses are taking away the explosive play anyway. We're not even going to try. We're not even going to try. Just everything, screens and draws and throws 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and that's it. Seth Galina, thank you so much for being with us, man. You spent a bunch of time with us here. Really appreciate it. Get back to watching Tennessee Titans play action. And please, again, to all of our fine listeners, if you haven't heard the Too High podcast, make sure you go check that out, because it will make you a smarter football fan. Seth, thanks a lot, bud.
Thank you. Anytime.
All right, there you have it. You have your Galina, you have your Woodhead, you have a nice, full, hefty, meaty podcast to carry you through the rest of the week. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Make sure you rate, comment, subscribe, please. If you haven't already, check us out on YouTube. Leave a comment there. I try to be as active as I can in the comment section there. A lot of fun going back and forth with the viewers on YouTube. And also keep an eye out for the Patriots Talk podcast. Myself, Tommy Curran, Matt Castle. That's coming at you tomorrow. You know it, you love it, you listen to it, and we thank you for it. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you very soon.